Hey, it's Mr. Rayberg here saying, how are you today? Today we're looking at Chapter 9 and Section 1 about Washington's presidency. So today what we're going to be taking a look at is Washington and our first government. So to start off with, Washington is elected by unanimous vote, uni meaning all, one, and he ends up being inaugurated or officially sworn in on April 30th, 1789. And so this is taking place in New York City, which is our capital at this time. And it's a big deal, all right? First president, he's going to set a lot of precedents, which means that he is looking to be the first in a lot of things that he's doing. And other presidents following him are going to be taking his example and running with it and following what he does. So it's a big deal. The second place winner at this time is John Adams. And so according to the Constitution right now, at this time, he is the vice president. Later on, this could cause some problems, and I think you could understand that when we start to have people with different political views. So Congress is part of this new government too. Remember, we have our legislative branch, executive branch, and one of the things that they have to do right away is set up the judiciary. They do that through the Federal Judiciary Act of 1789, and they established this with 6 justices. There are 5 associate justices and 1 chief justice, and the chief justice is John Jay. So we're getting started here. Next, they establish some different cabinet positions or departments that the government's going to need to make things run successfully. And they go ahead and establish the Secretary or Department of State, Department of War, Department of Treasury, and the Department of Justice. And so these are going to be the 4 main departments. And to go along with this, the president gets to select people that are going to be his advisors for those. And so for the Secretary of State, Washington selects Thomas Jefferson. For the Secretary of War, he selects Henry Knox. For the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. And for the Attorney General, who's in charge of the Justice Department, Edmund Randolph. And so our government's ready to get going now. Let's go on to the nation's finances and what we had to look for with that. Well, during this time, the nation has $52 million in debt that we're having to worry about because of the Revolutionary War. This would be money owed to other nations, money owed to our own citizens, even the soldiers who were fighting on basically credit because they weren't getting paid. They're getting a promissory note. And so to take care of all this debt, our new Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, comes up with a new plan. Now you have to understand that his plan's established on some of his viewpoints about the way the country should develop. He believes in a strong central government, and he wants to see the economic activity be business and industry. And this is a big change for the United States from being a rural agricultural type nation. And so Alexander Hamilton comes up with a proposal that has 3 parts. First part is to pay off all the war debt. He's going to combine all the debt of the states and the nation and get this all taken care of, because how can you have credibility if you aren't taking care of your debts with the other nations? And then he also wants to pay off the private citizens and the soldiers so that everybody's going to be happy with this new government. Next, the government needs to get some money or revenue. And to do this, he focuses on tariffs. A tariff is, of course, a tax on an imported item. And the reason why he focuses on this is that it's going to do 2 things. It makes imported items more expensive. And the other thing it accomplishes is that because they're more expensive, people may tend to buy the American-made goods, which is going to help our new industries and businesses get established and have more business from our own folks. And then finally, his last idea, his third idea, is to establish a national bank. And in this national bank, we're going to have a safe place to store our money. We'll be able to make loans to help businesses get established. And we'll be establishing a currency, which is going to make it easier for everybody to trade. Now, this is a pretty radical idea, and Hamilton needs to look to Thomas Jefferson to get some help. Thomas Jefferson's very influential, and so he's working with him, and they end up coming up with a compromise. Thomas Jefferson says, you know what, I think I can help get us through this, through Congress, if you go ahead and say that the new capital of our nation will be in the South. The northern states want to have all the debt rolled into one. Southern states have been taking care of paying off their debt, and so this wasn't something that they were really interested in. But Jefferson says, if you can go and guarantee that we'll have our capital in the South, then I think they'll go for it. And they do, and that's how we end up having our capital move from New York to Washington, D.C. Alexander Hamilton has these opponents that are against his idea of business and industry. They would include people like Thomas Jefferson and James Madison. And one of the big things that Thomas Jefferson wanted to see was a nation of farmers. He thought that would be the ideal kind of nation. Jefferson and Madison also have what's called a strict interpretation of the Constitution. And basically they were saying, how can you have a national bank when it's not in the Constitution? If it's not there, we shouldn't be doing it. And Alexander Hamilton said, well, you know what? There's this thing called the Elastic Clause, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, that basically says the government can expand its role, kind of like elastic waistband at Thanksgiving, to go be able to accomplish the job and role that it's supposed to do for the nation's good. And so he uses this loose interpretation. And with this, we start to see the development of political parties. And it's up that George Washington goes with Alexander Hamilton's idea, so that we have a national bank. Congress agrees with that. But now, because of this disagreement about loose and strict interpretation of the Constitution, we're going to see a rise of political parties. And hey, that's Section 1.